Rwanda's restructuring in the way business is conducted has been key towards its economic prosperity, be it through registration of businesses, zero tolerance to corruption, or even regulatory policies. Lois Washira brings us more insights on the Rwandan business environment.
Under the leadership of President Paul Kagame, Rwanda has made unprecedented socio-economic and political progress and consolidated peace, stability, as well as social cohesion among Rwandans, becoming one of the most sought-after investment destinations in East Africa.
The Rwandan economy, basically in 1995, after the genocide, it had declined by 50%, and inflation was at 65%. That was a very, very tough period, where Rwanda, after genocide, had lost its own capacity in terms of people. It had no revenues, and it had no institutions. But then after that, there was a period, basically from emergency period to rehabilitation period, and now to sustainable development period. During the rehabilitation and development period, that's when most of the institutions that were never existent in the country were put in place, including the Rwanda Revenue Authority, including the National Tender Board, the Ombudsman, the Unity and Reconciliation Commission, and so many others, including the Office of Auditor General. Those were put in place during that period to complement the functioning of the government. Now we are no longer talking about the economy declining by 50%. Now we are talking about the economy increasing last year by 8.6%. We had a target of 7%, but we achieved 8.6% despite the terrible situation in the global economic environment.
I think the main reason the government of Rwanda succeeded so enormously in improving its doing business ranking is because there was tremendous political will and commitment all the way through government, including at the level of the president. In addition, it's important to recognize that two other factors make Rwanda a relatively good place to do business. First of all, there has been very strong macroeconomic performance as well. There's been strong growth, inflation has been contained. Even during 2011, when there was relatively high inflation in the East African community because of food and fuel prices internationally, Rwanda maintained a lower inflation rate than all of its neighbors. Beyond that, it's managed its debt fairly well, and it's kept a relatively stable exchange rate.
This repositioning can be largely attributed to the government's efforts to work towards eradicating poverty and creating economic prosperity. By implementing a transparent governance system and improving on accountability, Rwanda is now placed third in Africa, after South Africa and Mauritius, on the World Bank's 2012 Ease of Doing Business report.
The government's doing many things. The doing business indicators measure such things as the time and expense it takes to start a business, the quality of the regulatory environment, the ease of accessing credit, the ability to trade goods across borders, the quality of judicial processes. And Rwanda has made striking improvements in all of those areas. And because its doing business ranking improved so enormously in such a short period of time, the government really put Rwanda on the map as a place to do business.
In terms of the fastest growing sectors that have really driven this growth potential, in most recent years has been construction, wholesale and retail trade has also exhibited strong growth, as well as agriculture. They benefit from the fact that they're not as close to the east coast as Kenya is. As you know, Kenya experiences volatile weather. So if you look at the inflation number, for instance, it's been in the single digits, at least urban inflation, over the past 12 months. And the main reason is because food production has been significantly strong.
We've achieved a lot so far. If you look at the rankings, both for the doing business, the global competitiveness, you can see where we came from and where we are today. It's simply because we've put a lot of efforts in reforming our business environment. I just want to say that we'll continue. We want, because we believe there are still reforms that need to be made to be able to keep attracting the best investments from as many countries as possible. And we want to take this opportunity to encourage people, investors, to come to Rwanda and take advantage of all these reforms we are making, but most importantly, take advantage of the opportunities, investment opportunities that we have in different sectors.
These reforms have also led to increased foreign direct investments, as the country is perceived to be less corrupt than some of its African counterparts. The ease of doing business, registration and licensing processes in the country also assists in speeding up the rate of return on capital investments made.
I think Rwanda is a very easy place to do business, and whatever process you're going through, you find that it is normally very easy. We started off the process in March, and we managed to get listed, fully completed, ring the bell by 1st of September. That is remarkable by any standards, especially within East Africa. And we were lucky that we managed to get over 300% subscription.
Rwanda is, or is actually one of the most attractive place of doing business in the world, and this has been shown by so many reports. And you also need to know that there is this almost zero corruption environment, which is making actually business to grow so fast because there's no big constraint here. And there is almost zero formalities for companies to come into Rwanda and open the shop in the next 2 or 3 hours when they are here.
Despite being landlocked, its geographic location does not limit the vast opportunities it has to offer.
Our geographical position is such that we are surrounded by a lot of big guys, right? I mean, we have big neighbor to the west, DRC, that has a lot of minerals and a lot of natural resources. We have Kenya and Uganda that, you know, are part of slightly bigger economies. We have Tanzania that has natural resources as well. So we need to be outstanding. Now, the best way to be outstanding is to make the Rwandan experience memorable. And this is why our vision is to be a service-based economy. Is when you come to Rwanda, from the time you get off the plane, this has to be a different experience. And if you're coming for business, it has to be an easy experience. And the idea is that if we're easy and good enough, people would take a second look at the country and say, maybe there's something here that we're not seeing at first sight. And that comes from the customer care, that comes from, you know, if you want to register a business, nobody's asking you for a kickback, you can do it quickly. And if you can trade quickly, what we've seen, at least when we entered the East African community, is as we removed some of the barriers and the bureaucracy, the turnover increases exponentially, because what you could do in a week, now you can do in 2 days. So you can make more money in a shorter time. So it benefits everyone, benefits you as an investor, but it also benefits us as a country. But the bottom line is we want your experience in Rwanda to be memorable, whatever you've come to do.
Being a small economy, and usually one of the things that would help us in terms of sustainability, in terms of the economy, is really for us to develop a very strong export base. In as much as our exports are growing, for example, in the first half of this year, our exports increased by 25%, and our imports increased by 22%. Our imports mainly, it was one of the highest imports that we had, and it was going mainly in the capital goods and intermediate goods, which are very helpful in terms of growing the economy.
Rwanda's annual inflation rate is expected to decline to slightly lower than 5% by the year 2015, and the government has set its foreign investment target to at least 23% of GDP by the year 2020, providing a basis for sustained economic growth.
That's a long story and innovation, because we don't have any natural resources which are going to supplement our reserves and all that. So we had to make sure that we learned the hard way. One was very much, first of all, building on capacity. Even with internally, we had to reform, separated the departments, and having different departments work together to make sure that we build our capacity for research. Research in understanding our own economy, understanding all the sources of inflation, understanding what is going on locally, what's going on in the region, and also globally, so that we can assess the situation ahead of time. We started seeing the signals early, like around January, February of last year, when we saw that the prices of fuel are going up. We're seeing the food prices are going up at the same time. We're seeing the drought. We're seeing the pressures in our own region. We're seeing the Eurozone crisis and the high debt of the US. That's the time when it was, the rating was downgraded. And then we realized we had to do something. And that's when we had to plan way ahead of time. In our own situation, First of all, we understand our system, our people, understand now how the economy, the structure of it, and we realize that we had to also work with the government, because the central bank can have a very big impact, mainly on the core inflation. That's the demand side inflation for the money that's coming from the banking institutions. But also, when it comes from the supply side, it's better to work with the government because they're the ones who can take policies that can have impact on the supply side. And when you look at the food and the fuel, they are on the supply side. So we had to engage the government way ahead of time, and that's why the government took a decision through the Ministry of Finance to reduce the taxes on fuel so that we can try to deal together with the inflation. We also had to work with the Ministry of Agriculture, which is in charge of food. They have storages whereby they would need our advice on really the situation and when those kind of bumper harvests can be put on the market, on how they can encourage the private sector to have storage facilities. And also with the Ministry of Trade to make sure that there's no speculation in terms of trade. So there was a lot of, I would say, initiatives that were taken and making sure that we're also liaising with our colleagues in the East African community, trying to know how they see their economies and how it is likely to cross border and affect us.
Now, according to the World Bank's Doing Business report, Rwanda has been ranked third in Africa after South Africa and Mauritius. What are some of the contributing factors?
Well, first of all, there are two things that complement each other. When you say for Rwanda to become a country where anybody can come to invest. Number one, as I said, it's macroeconomic stability. Low inflation, high economic growth, stable currency, and also a stable financial sector. But also there is a conducive environment for business. That means the way we make it easier for anybody to come and do business here. Us being one of the top business reformers, Rwanda being number 3 in Africa in terms of competitiveness, Rwanda being number 4 of least corrupt countries in Africa, this really adds up to saying that something is being done in Rwanda from all the fronts. And that's why we are trying to capitalize on this and try to improve as we go. Because of our openness, you know that our capital here, our capital is liberalized, whereby you can bring in an amount of money, you can take it back, you can take, free repatriation of any kind of profits with no charge, and also at the capital market, also treating the East Africans as Rwandans in terms of taxation, in terms of doing business on our capital market. And for us, this has been really very, very helpful. We are now constantly working together to see which other areas can we reform so that we can improve the way we do business.